Effie, something that I asked Russell about, but he didn't quite get into yet, about how the environment could be used to sell Israel in the United States?
I would like to give you a figure. 1901, we have in all over Israel 200 dunams. In 1948, after the Holocaust, we have 1 million dunams, thanks to the global jury who gave 1 cent, 1 cent, $1, and 1 mark, etc. And with that money, we had 1 million. Today, in those lands make the borders of Israel, 360 communities that have built in 1948, etc. Today we have almost 2.5 million dunams. We are gathering that land, and we are not allowed to sell any dunam, and we are protecting it. Now, we have 60, I want you to know, and I'm sure that most of you know, that 60% of the land of Israel is the Negev. And in the north of Israel, we don't have, in Galil, we don't have yet the majority, the Jewish majority. Now, what our goal of Keren Kayemet, JNF goal, target is to make Israel more and more flourishing. I can tell you that only in the 5 last years, we built 6 new communities, 3 of them for those who evacuated from Gaza. Chalutzit 1, Chalutzit 4, Shlomit, etc., etc. And we are keeping going every day, every month. Today we are making 300 projects all over Israel, together with JNF United States, with Russell, with Stan and the others. We build the biggest, the largest park in Israel, the Park Be'er Sheva, in the south of Israel, in the north of Israel, Kishon, etc., etc. So, and you have to mention also 1.5 million dunam of forest. You know, Mark Twain, when he came to Israel, he wrote a book. And in that book, he wrote that he never saw such an ugly country that Israel. And he wrote also that Israel, Palestine, those days, have to get the crown of the ugliest country. But since then, we planted 200 million trees all over Israel, and today, thanks to Keren Kayemet, we are the 4th aquifer of Israel. 50% of the agriculture is coming from the water that we are recycling water, and 78% of the water of Israel, the gray water of Israel, is recycling. We are #1 in the world. So when you came to Israel, and you came, and I can ask you one thing. I don't think that every Jew wants to live in Israel. Everyone can live whatever he wants. But only one question, or only one wish, that everyone will have something, a connection in Israel. Once it was the blue box, and it's still the net between all the global Jewry in Israel. The blue box was the net, and today also, but not as before.
Thank you.
And I would like that everyone will come to see how Israel is flourishing, blooming, and of course, what we are doing is for the next generation that will come, like to come, and to live in Israel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. While I ask David his question, people can already, I can't really see. Are they, no?
Oh, you have.
Oh, there you are. Hello. Okay, so people are lining up. That's good to ask questions, which you'll start asking immediately after David's question. Thank you for the person who turned on the lights for me. David, I want to direct to you the question that a lot of people are maybe wanted to ask about here, that there's been a controversy over something written by someone calling himself a journalist named Peter Beinart in the United States, who seems to believe that the relationship between young people in America and Israel has been irrevocably harmed by Israel's policies. Is that really true, and what do you think about his solutions?
I don't know if it's been irreparably harmed, but I think that there's a certain warning in the things that Peter Beinart has written that we have to take to heart. Not having yet read his book, I won't comment on it. I'll leave that to others. But there is a warning out there, and I think the warning is that we have to reclaim the Zionist dream. This conference, this entire conference was framed as fighting for the Zionist dream. All I've heard about up until our panel has been fighting the Zionist nightmare, a nuclear Iran, the Intifada, and so on. What happened to the values? What happened to the dream that was really at the origins of Zionism to begin with? It was Herzl himself who more than 100 years ago said that he truly believes that even after we get our piece of land, Zionism will continue as an ideal, for Zionism isn't only the longing for a piece of the promised land, but also the longing for ethical and spiritual fulfillment. You don't need to read very far in any paper, including the Jerusalem Post, to know that we haven't yet reached that spiritual and ethical fulfillment. It's that dream of creating a chevrat mofet, of creating an exemplary society, that we have to inspire. You talked, Russell and others, about about the importance of reaching out to our young. It's that idealism, that effort to create of something of Israel, not just a safe place for Jews to live in, as important as that is, but really as an ideal kind of state. Herzl wrote 2 books, Der Judenstaat, which described the need for a shelter for the Jewish people, a refuge, but he also, even before he had a tiny piece of the land that Keren Kayemet eventually restored to us, he already wrote his utopian novel, Old New Land, Alt Neuland, in which he describes what this ideal country was going to look for. If we're going to respond to Peter Beinart, it's not going to be by attacking him, but by coming forward with this dream and inspiring a new generation about what we want to do.
Thank you to all our distinguished panelists for answering questions in a timely kind of manner and keeping our program moving, because we know that all the people are really here for Neshama Carlebach anyway. And so now we can have people ask brief questions, and I appreciate that the first question comes from a young college student in the United States, in Florida State University, is it? Please say your name and ask your brief question.
Hello.
And feel free to direct it to someone.
My name is Daniel Ackerman. I'm going to be a senior at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. And my question revolves specifically around diaspora Jews on college campuses, primarily 18 to 21-year-olds. You have all the distractions from football games to parties to plenty of other activities on campus, and it's difficult to get people interested in Israel. And there's only so much you could talk about with Israel being the only democracy. Israel made the camera pill, Bar Raffaelli. And it's rare that I get to ask experts, which is why I love these times, to get your wisdom. But what, in your opinion, will get young people ticking and interested in Israel, if not to start the conversation, to get people hooked? What can I do on my campus of 80,000 students to make Israel relevant, fun, and something that they want to make time for when you have all these distractions that a college campus offers you?
Great question. Maybe the Consul General wants to answer that one.
Well, what makes Israel relevant, essentially, you possess the answer. The biggest mistake that we made over the years is that we assumed that what will create the attraction and the relevance is, again, winning this imaginary debate. And it doesn't work, because today, and I think that every person here who visits university campuses regularly would agree with that, today the #1 problem that we have on campus is not that they're anti-Israel. The #1 problem that we have on campus is apathy. And campuses in America are not primarily anti-Israel. If they're anything, they are probably more anti-establishment in general terms than anti-Israel. So the task and the goal and the challenge is to create relevance. And we, again, conducted research, and we know that there are 6 areas that students are interested in. #1, believe it or not, is not the Middle East. I know it's a shock to all of you, but it's not the Middle East. Number one is lifestyle and leisure. Number one attraction is lifestyle and leisure. Everything that has to do with the popular culture they consume, the way they dress, what they eat, the kind of music they listen to, the kind of movies they go to. And Israel has a lot to offer in that area. The second thing that we discovered is that a conversation about Israel as a political entity is not attractive to them. A conversation about Israelis as human beings, that may be attractive to them. And so therefore, our task as a community is to put a human face on that political entity called Israel by bringing to campus inspirational Israelis. Now, I can't tell you what kind of Israeli would work in Florida as opposed to Arizona.
Bar Rafaeli might
But I
work
can
in
tell
both.
you that Bar Rafaeli
Everywhere.
has an appeal probably to some. Some people will be inspired by a Nobel winner in chemistry. Some others will be inspired by Ohad Naharin, who is a very famous Israeli choreographer. And maybe some others at UCLA Film School will be inspired by a young Israeli filmmaker and so on and so forth. But the point is, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the success of the TED Talk conference, but the reason I think one of the reasons TED is so successful is because it's ideas expressed by human beings, by individuals, and you can actually identify an idea with a certain human being. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of inspirational Israelis that will make each and every one of us here in this room very proud to be a Jew or to be an Israeli. And we need to bring them to the forefront as a community, as a collective. I can tell you, and in the next several weeks this will become available to the entire community to celebrate, we compiled in the Foreign Ministry a database of some 300 inspirational Israelis. It's called Faces of Israel. And we will make it, we will launch it online in the next few weeks, and it will be available to every Jewish community to use all over the world.
Brilliant. I'll tweet that.
I just want to add, I think that we also have to start understanding the unity that we don't have. We spend $100+ million on college campuses every year. There's about 250,000 students, Jewish students, on the college campuses of America. If you spend about $100 million and we've had the success rate that we have had, I think we should go out of business. So I think that what we have to do is understand that we have to work together as well. Every single organization is the organization going on college campuses. Your students don't care. They don't care about all those initials. They don't care about all those movements. They don't care that we bring 1,800,000 shulchim to the college campuses so that they can write reports. I read the reports. We have touched somewhere around 3.5 billion students a year. If you read all those reports, the reality is what you said. It has to be fun. It has to be relevant. It's what Ido says. It has to be part of their life. We started a campaign called Positively Israel. Now, it's not just to bring Israel to the forefront of talking about the pill, but it's to talk about change the discussion, to change the conversation, to have the conversation about Israel making the world a better place. They're involved in the world. Every anti-movement that ever started in the world starts on college campuses. That's where you're going. You just left your home. You have 12 years of your parents, 12 years of school with your parents telling you everything to do. You finally get to go out. You're going to be anti. We have to understand the community. And what we have to do is work together as a unity to bring that fun, bring the relevance, bring Israel making the world a better place, and investing beyond birthright into the second, third, and fifth trips that aren't just the Massa programs that are for long-term programs. But I have to tell you, it's a sad story. You have about 10,000 kids going on birthright. Except for about 250 of them who will go back on a Massa or other programs, the others will not go to Israel until they're 35 or 40. Now that's a long vacation time from Israel. We have to invest in those other kinds of programs that are innovative and fun and exciting for the college campuses.
Okay. Now, I know there are probably panelists that want to answer this question, but I'm going to take more questions now, and I'm sure you'll have ways of addressing things that you wanted to say. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, ma'am.
A lot of what I wanted to say has already been answered, but...
What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Vita Charo. I am a retired federal employee. The check is in the mail. The question that I have is, how do you appeal to kids at Jewish day schools? I have two daughters, aged 24 and 30 now. And they went to a Hebrew day school all the way through, graduated from it. They learned history, they learned about the Holocaust, they learned Hebrew, they learned all kinds of stuff. And they came out of it not caring about Israel very much.
Right.
And in fact, at the Jewish Day School, we're outside Washington, D.C., they finish early, and the last semester of school they spend in first they do the Holocaust tour, or what I like to call the Holocaust tour, in Europe, and then they go to Israel and they spend 3 months on a kibbutz or something of that sort. It doesn't seem to make as much of an impression or as good an impression as it could. One thing about these kids I want to just suggest is they are very much into tikkun olam. This they have been taught. They're required to do public service. They're required to. They get points for it. I think a lot of them want to give, not money, because they don't have it usually. But if there were programs or more programs in Israel where they could go and help, and help, for example, Binai is a program in Israel it's a what they call a secular yeshiva, in other words, a non-super religious yeshiva. And their American kids and Israeli kids go and they help with poor
I think they've gotten the point of the question.
So that, what about it?
Issy or David, whichever one.
Your kids were probably on my program if they were in the Charles E. Smith School,
Right.
or maybe it was after my time, but for quite a while I directed Ramah programs in Israel where we had that. So I certainly understand where you're coming from. But I think you gave a good part of the answer in your question. We need to create more challenging, stimulating opportunities for people to spend that time there. That's the connection. They're not going to get it in the classroom if we only leave them in the classrooms and talk about Israel. It's not going to impact on them in the same way as getting them over there and getting them involved in projects, in physical projects, in social action projects. You mentioned Tikkun Olam. And the World Zionist Organization and Jewish Agency are now working very hard to create more opportunities, more in-between opportunities. We know that if there isn't follow-up to birthright programs, if there aren't opportunities, a spiral of opportunities, if we're not working with the people when they come back to Israel, having sent them there in the first place is not going to have the ongoing impact that it needs to have. So I think in the organized Jewish world, at least on the Israel side, we are very involved now in trying to create those in-between experiences.
I would agree with David, but I would make one additional proviso. My feeling is that the curriculum in the school itself, particularly a Jewish school, is extraordinarily important. What is needed is a course in the history of Israel, a course that will teach children the narrative, the true Jewish narrative, because that is what is the biggest thing lacking in our communities all over the world today. And the time for that is not at university. The time for that is towards the senior high school years. And Jewish day schools at least should ensure that that happens. And where it doesn't happen in Jewish day schools, synagogues and community centers should, because this is the battle for young people's future attitudes towards Israel.
Thank you, Issy. Hello, next question.
Okay, you guys are off the hook on this one. Trying to bring things back more on an existential level. Concerning a letter I sent off to the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon a number of months ago. Probably coincidental, but, you know, within 10 days they sent General Dempsey.
I'm sorry, do you have a specific question to one of these people about diaspora Jewry, which is the topic here?
No. Okay, I guess I won't get too far. With why 10 reasons why this bomb by Iran.
No, I'm sorry.
Next.
We have to go on to the next question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Basically, I'll rephrase it. You know, the bottom line, Zionism has to redefine itself.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Thank you so much.
If it's going to be relevant to Israel, you know, and the diaspora. Okay, the way to do that is instill courage in Zionism.
Okay, thank you.
We cannot be defined by fear anymore. We have to be defined by courage.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, what's your name?
Yes, my name is Barbara Silvers. I have a two-pronged question. We mentioned the birthright. But what bothers me most is that there's no follow-through for the parents or the grandparents, because they are the ones who are the teachers, and they are the ones that will keep that mode going. And where are the programs for them? And as a baby boomer, also, we were all so dedicated to volunteer and to give of ourselves, and somewhere in life we lost that. And how do we get it back? Because the Jews, my peers, are saying, well, I have to worry about myself, not Israel. How do you get them back on that road?
I'm
Barbara.
going to jump in just because I don't agree with the premise. We have a program here called Shabbat in the Park. It's for 500 young people under the age of 35. It sells out in 24 hours without an invitation. We have these things across the United States. I see young people. There's a young person here who's running a program called the Summit for Environmental Awareness and People for Sustainability. There is thousands upon thousands upon thousands of young people who are answering the call, raising their hands, and what we have to do is look at that glass and look how wonderful it is, and Birthright has given us the opportunity. We cannot generate programs that are going to touch every single person every single time we go. What we have to do is understand what those programs are, and then take those young people who are inspired and leadership. At the end of the day, it's always going to be a small group of people leading the way.
All right, but also keep the ball rolling once they go through the program.
There is also now a baby boomers birthright program. They just had one for people 50 plus as an experiment. I don't know the results yet, but maybe there'll be an opportunity.
The New York Federation just started that, so maybe other federations will follow suit with that.
If I may add to that, I think that to a large degree the communal anxieties around the whole discussion of the lack of follow-up with birthright kids, I think stems from somewhat lack of understanding of the new media and the new technological environment. And I say this as a parent to a birthright kid and as a parent to another kid who is about to go on birthright. The follow-up happens in a big way. It's largely invisible to the eyes of the parents and the grandparents. It happens on Facebook. It's intensive. I can tell you my daughter was on birthright 3 years ago with a group from Stanford. She's still in touch with them over Facebook almost on a daily basis. Those 10 days they spent together, as most of them would attest, also publicly, was a life-changing event. And the reason why it was a life-changing event for them, as well as to the majority of kids that go on birthright, and similar programs, by the way, not just birthright. Every program that is experiential produces the same impact. And the reason is because Israel is that powerful of a place. It has this amazing power to change people. And people come to Israel and they're drawn to it, and it really forms a bond for life. And we shouldn't underestimate that.
Thank you. Next question.
Sandy Tankus. I am interested in Aliyah for all young people. I want to see everybody go to Israel. I know, and I'm surprised really that this hasn't been touched upon much today. I kind of expected it to be, and it hasn't been. But I know for a fact that my young cousins in Israel felt the need to go to Cyprus to get married so that they could then come back and be married by their rabbi at Beit Daniel, that has prevented other relatives of mine, young people, from actually making Aliyah. And this is an issue, the fairness of what goes on among the branches of Judaism in Israel is something that's very important, certainly, and I'm wondering, when is this going to be resolved?
Well, this certainly sounds like a question for David, who has gone through something similar. And then I think that Issy will want to respond as well. The people who are up here, we're going to close the list after the person who just came. And then between this panel and the next one, the break has been canceled in order to keep things moving.
I very much appreciate the question. When I mentioned before that we talk about Jewish peoplehood, that perhaps we mean different things, I think this is certainly one of those areas. I happened to be having lunch with a young man here who's very committed to Israel, very involved, been to Israel twice, wants to make Aliyah, born to a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother, and he has this big problem. When it was spoken about before that Hitler decided for us who's Jewish and who isn't Jewish, that only applies on the way to the gas chambers. It doesn't apply on the way to Israel. And it's a major, major issue. People that would have been killed because they were Jewish 60, 70 years ago are now not allowed to make aliyah or to marry in accordance with their own choice once they're in Israel. This is obviously not the forum in which we're going to solve the problem, but I think for all of us, particularly us Israelis, it's extremely important to have heard this comment from you. It's something that all of our leadership has to take seriously, and that our politicians can't afford to put those issues off because of security issues and wars and economic issues, and they can't deal with those things right now. That will come later. Later will come, and we're not going to have American Jewry in particular behind us if we're not able to be inclusive, and your comment, I think, is very, very important.
The matter is very, very much more complex than just chick-chuck. And whilst I fully endorse and understand the sentiments expressed by David, I do hope and believe that in the next elections there will be major changes taking place that will overcome most of these problems. And I fully endorse it is very complicated. It's not an easy question, but it's one that certainly has to be tackled, and the way it is now is totally unsustainable. That applies to conversion and a whole series of other issues. And this is one of those issues where I think Jews in the diaspora are entitled to speak about. There's no security issue directly involved here. Having said that, let me say, halavai, the problem of aliyah from the United States was due to the fact that it was our marriage laws. Believe me, we need aliyah from the United States. We want more aliyah from the United States, and there are plenty of people available without these problems that could make it. I just would like to see an atmosphere which recognizes that whilst the vast majority of American Jews are not going to come on aliyah, there is scope for larger numbers to come, and it is extraordinarily important, both for you as an American, as the main diaspora Jewish community, and for us in Israel, for that aliyah to continue. And for aliyah, as you rightly said, not to be on the agenda. The central agenda of every Jewish discussion is, to my mind, one of the sad reflections on the fact that certain elements in American Jewish life that don't want to talk about aliyah, and because of their position and organizational strength, have kind of wiped it off the agenda. I know that people like David and many others in the World Zionist Organization are fighting against this, but it's a fight we have to fight and overcome. We need aliyah, even if it's only some of your youngest and best people, but we need it. And believe me, it's a marvelous life if you want to be a full Jew. Speaking as one who made aliyah fairly late in life, my only regret, as I said in an article I wrote last week, the only regret of my wife and myself is that we didn't make it much earlier. For those of you that want to live a full Jewish life and can, I know it's not possible for all.
Thank you.
Aliyah is marvelous.
Wonderful. Yes,
Hi,
sir.
my name is Howard Katzoff, and I'd like to ask an economic question of this panel.
Perhaps to the banker.
We're talking about an existential threat throughout the day. What will the effect of the existential threat of Iran have on venture capital investment, the real estate boom in Israel, the construction of new factories and research facilities by Intel, Microsoft, et cetera, and tourism in Israel? That's the existential threat for me, not just a bomb.
Well, obviously, economics needs a stable political environment. But having said that, you know, this existential threat, as you call it, I mean, Israel has undergone various wars, intifadas, et cetera, and as someone who spent the vast majority of his life in Israel doing banking in Israel, I can tell you, and you know, even if you read the rating agencies' reports about Israel, and I know that there's a lot of discussion about the rating agencies, but the rating agencies, even today, take into account this existential threat. I think that people and the society in Israel in general, it's difficult to say, but is quite used to behaving under difficult and trying circumstances. And, you know, Intel and all the rest of it, when they invest in Israel, and I've had many discussions in this regard, take this issue into account. It's not something that's beyond their radar. The only thing I would say, and again, quoting the rating agencies, Israel will not have the A rating or the A+ rating that it has today if not for the existential threat. If it were to be someplace in Western Europe, the rating would probably be a AA or higher because of the macroeconomic numbers. So I would say, in reply to your question, really, that threat is factored in. Were it not to be in there, it would be much better.
Our second to last question.
I'm a genuine diaspora Jew. I'm Kenneth Pialkin, chairman of the American-Israel Friendship League. Our mission is to make friends for Israel and to bring them there. I thank God every day for Ido Aharoni and Izzy Liebler. Izzy, who writes things of stimulation that should attract American Jews, and Ido, who works night and day on his program of explaining it. My problem as a person trying to make friends for Israel is the problem that when Gertrude Stein was dying, lying on her deathbed in Paris, her friends drew near and asked, what is she thinking? And they heard her say, what is the answer? What is the answer? And as she got closer and closer to death, her question changed to, what is the question?
What is the question, sir?
Now, I don't know what the hell your question is here. What do you mean by diaspora? Who are you identifying? What is the public to which you are seeking? And I just want to tell you, you had statistics today. The Jewish people in America voted 78% against a candidate who was mostly for Israel. Doesn't that send you a message that Israel is less and less and less a concern for the Jewish people in America? When you look at debates in America today, they're asking about, what do you think of the settlements? What do you think of the... you have Jewish organizations supporting BDS. That is... Okay. Now, I don't think you focused on who it is you're looking at, what it is you're trying to find, how you can encourage the existence of Jews. You won't get a diaspora to support Israel unless Jews become Jewish.
Okay.
And Jews won't be Jewish unless you do something to encourage the Jewish family, to encourage their children to think the way the parents do.
Okay.
And so I wish you would focus a little bit on
that constructive
questions,
criticism, I think, is helpful for all of us.
And not so much as the answer.
Thank you. And then now we have our last question.
Hi, my name is Brian H. Davis. I'm the president of the American Israel Chamber of Commerce of Minnesota, and I'd like to make a positive point. There's a new movie out, a new documentary, which depicts Israel as making the world a better place. And it's something very, very wonderful, very well done. It's called Israel Inside. It's done by a nonprofit. Our Chamber of Commerce sponsored a showing of it on Thursday. It was wonderful. It showed the Tikkun Olam. It showed the new technology. It demonstrated the history, but it did it in a very positive way, a very optimistic way, which I'd like to certainly recommend that you take a look at. It'd be a very valuable tool in all of our common efforts in support of Israel. And I'd like to quickly ask if anyone has seen that, and I'm happy to...
We wrote about it in depth in the Jerusalem Post, and there are people here who want to take those for very brief closing statements of less than a minute before we yield the floor to our next distinguished panel.
I just wanted to say something in reference to the last comment. And sometimes we have a tendency in the community to mix or confuse the need to have a long-term, overarching strategic outlook and to use crisis management mechanisms. In other words, movies like Israel Inside or Startup Nation as the book or any other conversation, this is not the answer when we have to deal with a crisis of the caliber of the flotilla or a crisis of the caliber of Israel's military going into Gaza. So we must not confuse strategic tools with crisis management tools. And sometimes we have a tendency to confuse the two, and that creates a real problem for us. There is a need to manage the crisis. But at the same time, no organization, no company, and no country thrived on crisis management alone. And for far too long, the only thing we did as a collective is manage crisis. It's time for us to take the offense. You can't win the game on defense alone. You have at one point to take the proactive approach and to score. And you can score when the conversation is broadened, when you discuss the full reality that exists in Israel and not only Israel's problems. You can't start a relationship with the American consumer. Whether the consumer is Jewish or not, it's not relevant. But you can't start the interaction with the American consumer with a discussion that is all about Israel's problems.
Okay.
This kind of relationship is not going anywhere.
So I'm sorry, I know many of you have things to say about that, but I've just been told that we have to wrap up.
I would like only one sentence to say. You know, before there was spoke about war, Iran, etc. Now I want to say, as I said always, the most important for the Jewish life is education and Jewish education.
And
in Israel and the diaspora as well. It's more important even for the defense money. And I can tell you that Keren Kayemet Israel, JNF, we are going to support education in all over the world.
On that note, on education, that I think all the panelists can agree with.
And the last thing is about someone, a child, came to his father and said to his father, I have a question to you. So the father said to him, you know, you are a clever boy. I don't have any answer. Let's go to the rabbi. So they went to the rabbi. And when he came to the rabbi, the kid stood up. And like this, he said to the rabbi, look, I have something in my hand. What do I have? So the rabbi answered to him, you have a butterfly. So the boy said, oh, the rabbi is clever. But do the butterfly is dying or is alive? So the rabbi said to him, look, if I will say to you, it's alive, you will stretch him like this. If I will tell you it's dead, the butterfly, you will open your hand and it flew. So the answer about the relations between the diaspora and Israel is only in our hand, as the rabbi said to the child. The answer is in your hand. Together, we can make Israel and diaspora much, much better for all the global Jewry around the world.
Thank you very much, Daphne, to all our panel.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to all of you for coming to the Jerusalem Post Conference and for those of you watching it around the world. And thank you to the best editor-in-chief that there is.
Thank you, Gil Huffman, and thanks for a fascinating panel. In the interest of time, we're going to go straight on to our third panel, which I hope is going to be the most interesting yet. So please stay seated as panelists get up and are replaced by others.